Hello everyone, welcome to another Central Florida rail production. Today I won't be documenting one certain outing, but instead the action you can see in my local metropolis, Tampa, Florida. We've been quite busy lately with school and band and personal events, so at the end of summer I thought I'd throw together this video showcasing the various operations in the Tampa Bay area. I noticed that lots of people ask where to rail fan in Tampa for certain trains, so I hope this answers any questions about the myriad of lines and movements around Tampa. So without further ado, let's get into CSX 101, the Tampa District. We'll start at the eastmost section of Tampa known as Valrico. We're here at Valrico Junction on a chilly January morning waiting on K339, now symboled B339. The tracks to the left are the S line and the Valrico siding, and the tracks curving to the right are the Bone Valley's Valrico sub. This line is known as the gateway to the Bone Valley as all Tampa-bound trains have to pass here. Phosphate is mined in the Bone Valley, a rural area south of Lakeland, and transported via train. Some of the product is sent north through Winston, but most of it is carried to Rockport Yard in Tampa, where finished fertilizer and wet rock phosphate are loaded onto ships. B339 is making a morning dash from a mine in Ag Rock to Rockport with open hopper cars. This means the product is fresh from the mine and will either be shipped out as is or will be processed into DAP or diammonium phosphate. Although not as massive as it used to be, the phosphate industry in Central Florida is still important, as phosphate is a commodity used in fertilizer and everyday items, like that of sodas and toothpaste. Phosphate trains can differ in the Tampa Bay area, like that B339 that we just saw. Behind the two locomotives was a long string of loaded wet rock hoppers. When that phosphate gets to the port, some of it's sent out and some is processed. The raw material that's shipped are transported on cars like these, flip-top rotary-capable phosphate cars. Continuing westbound, we get to Falkenberg Road, which is the first at-grade road crossing of the S-Line out of Tampa. There's no signals or junctions here, but you'll still hear it on the radio, as it's the unofficial spot where some Tampa trains, usually M442, grab their conductor. At sunset, a normal M442, the Tampa to Waycross daily freight, is seen here at Falkenberg, tripling out his train before picking up his conductor. About 3 miles west of Falkenberg is the north end of Seaboard's Yeoman Yard. Built in 1950 to replace the old downtown yard and present-day channel side, Yeoman is the hub for Tampa freight traffic. Within the yard, there is an engine shop, a car repair shop, and even a separate intermodal ramp for Tampa's minimal intermodal traffic. 78th Street is a rail fan favorable location as it's a public road, and between yard action and phosphate trains, it can get pretty busy. It's about 7 a.m. on a humid September morning, and K315, now a B315, is crawling into Yeoman for a crew change. The engines have come out of Mulberry Yard south of Lakeland, with their destination being Rockport Yard south of Tampa, to pick up a phosphate train and take it to Mosaic's New Wales facility in the Bone Valley. For now, they'll park their engines and wait for a crew van to take them away. Later in the morning, B317 lights up the scanner, another New Wales to Rockport shuttle carrying finished DAP fertilizer to the port. Those white CSX phosphate cars that make up the entire train are native to Florida, specifically for use in the Bone Valley. Overhauled in Tampa's Usita shops, the cars are custom built to work in perfect operation with a Rockport dumper. Nowadays, it's common to see these on most phosphate movements. B311 is another morning staple here, seen rolling over the bypass canal with an empty train of more of those white hoppers. With the phosphates out of the way, the locals can move out. This is the north end of a yard, and most locals on the southern portion of the S and A line are based out of here. L779 is a sure bet on an early morning, a daily local switcher that runs up to Plant City on the S line and works various industries along the way. Here he is rounding the corner at Plant City to cross the infamous diamond. Next up at Yeoman is a yard switcher, making a short run up the line to switch M&W distributors. All of those boxcars are destined for their spur, with this train, Y193, pulling out 2 empties on the return trip. During the day, Yeoman usually operates 2 to 3 yard switchers, and every so often they make local runs outside of the yard to take a handful of cars to nearby customers. M441, the southbound Waycross to Tampa freight, has been steadily making daylight appearances here as well. This is the majority of Tampa's mixed freight on one train, and today he's almost 2 miles long, which for a Saturday morning is pretty good. In the early afternoon, the action picks up again with the loaded ethanol train approaching the yard. This was a perfectly timed catch, as these ethanol trains run whenever they want. Usually delayed, these trains come into the yard 24/7. Today, we just got lucky in the sense that it ran in good daylight, and we had others giving us location statuses. Foreign power is what makes these trains neat. This K421, which is now a B619, is led by a Canadian National SD75I, a CN-8, and a Union Pacific Evolution Series GEVO. Tampa has a massive gasoline terminal just south of Ybor City, where ethanol trains like these are destined for. CSX ships down these trains and takes them to be unloaded, and then mixed with gasoline. The cycle ends at your local gas station, where you fill up your car with maybe some of the ethanol that was transported by rail. 21 miles east of Tampa is Plant City. The at-grade crossing of the S and A line is located here. The S line signals have gone green for K423, which is now a B631. Coming south right at noon would be more loaded ethanol, unfortunately today with no foreign power. However, a southbound at 12 p.m. on a Wednesday is always a welcome sight. These trains aren't scheduled and usually don't run at favorable times.
631 clear south, Junction clear. Plant City, Interlock, 3646.
The final trains that pass 78th Street regularly are M442 and L700. Starting with L700, the Tropicana Juice train, which we'll see more of later. With the end of B619 now in the yard, the dispatcher has aligned 0823, which is now L700, around on the bypass track. 700 will pass 78th Street and back into the yard. Their consist will become the first cut of tonight's M442. I'm not sure anymore when the crew goes on duty for 442 because it used to depart Tampa between 6 and 7:30, but now it can run anywhere between 7 and 11 p.m. It all depends on how long the train is, and I guess other factors that can really delay it on some days. The last train, and by far the most rare, are coal trains. Just 6 years ago, you would see one of these each day, but times have changed and the massive TECO Big Bend Energy Center on Tampa Bay has almost fully converted to the cheaper and more eco-friendly natural gas. The symbols for TECO trains are CO10 and EO10. Here's a CO10 coming into Yeoman, which will finish off our look at 78th Street. On the south side of Yeoman is 50th Street and the final stretch of the S line. Here, 2 tracks can be seen. The train now crossing 50th Street is L755, currently on the Clearwater sub, the closer track to us. The secondary track is the Port of Tampa lead. It branches out at a crossover at 34th Street and makes a southward turn towards the port. This track sees 1 to 2 yard jobs a day, but also is where all of Tampa's ethanol trains are unloaded and mixed with gasoline. The track curving toward the north is Seaboard's Clearwater sub. It's making this 90-degree swerve north to cross the A-line into downtown Tampa. The crossing is known as TN, and signals guard each track in both directions. This evening, L781 has a green signal and is lined to cross TN only minutes after Amtrak 92 comes out of Tampa. And although CSX tries to use only smaller EMD locomotives for this job, sometimes there's just no other power in the yard.
Clear 6, Clearwater sub, going to channel 66.
Moving up the line about 7 miles is the junction of Sulfur Springs. Here the Clearwater sub splits off to the west towards the Gulf Coast in St. Pete. The track that continues north is the Bricksville sub. Tuesday afternoons between 5 and 8 p.m. you can usually see 2 trains here, L755 returning to Tampa and L781 heading north to Brooksville. Unfortunately, 781's been running later and later by the day, but it usually runs between 7 and 9 p.m. on weekdays. L755 is the local where M442 gets all of his auto racks from. 755 serves Drew Park, an industrial section of North Tampa notable for its abundance of rail-served industries and an automobile ramp where the auto racks are unloaded. And that completes the entire south end of the infamous S-Line, but it's not the end of the trackage of South Tampa. Stemming southbound out of Yeoman is the ex-Tampa Southern's Tampa Terminal and Palmetto subs from Tampa to Bradenton. This is one of those lines that are well known but documentally surprisingly little. This is a 40-mile stretch of track that hosts phosphate trains, locals, yard jobs, but most notably the Tropicana Juice Train. In the early mornings, the Juice Train, or L700, departs Tampa for Bradenton with Trops and freight from 441. During the morning, trains to Rockport and East Tampa are fleeted through Tampa and usually have authority over the Tampa Terminal Subdivision. Boy, that's a lot of Tampas. That is until L700 is coming back north. Usually arriving around lunchtime now, the Juice Train is always a staple running 7 days a week. Also around lunchtime, local L783 is dispatched from Tampa. This is your kitchen sink local, switching a plethora of industries along the line. From boxcars to tanks to hoppers and even rock for Palmetto, 783 is the weekday local for the Palmetto subdivision. Yard jobs including Y191 and 2 others will sometimes make runs down the sub to switch Palm River, Sutton, and Rockport. The last line out of Tampa is the Tampa Terminal sub that extends south and west down the Tampa Bay Peninsula, known as the Old Port Lead. Starting at Tampa Union Station, the line continues south for about 10 miles, ending at the Old Port of Tampa. Along the way is Rattlesnake Spur, a half-mile lead that branches out of the main and runs west to a couple of industries. Unfortunately, in this part of town, the name of the game is gentrification, and Rattlesnake's days are numbered. And that concludes a look at each and every rail line in the Tampa Bay area. Now, I know I didn't cover every last train that runs in Tampa, but I'd say for a viewer who doesn't know much about the area, this is a good foundational video. Feel free to comment below if you'd like to add anything or point something out that I missed. I always appreciate the feedback. But until next time, this is CSX 101, Tampa District, end of transmission.